Joe Biden inaugurated as 46th President of the United States of America.
Federal Executive Council approves harmonized teachers' bill.
President Buhari swears in newly appointed members of Code of Conduct Bureau and Police Service Commission.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss U.S.-Nigeria relations under Biden, as well as governing Nigeria's rural communities.
Mr. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. is now the 46th President of the United States. His inauguration yesterday has been greeted with enthusiasm around the world, especially in Africa, after his message of rebuilding alliances beyond the United States.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari expressed hope the Biden-Harris presidency will mark a strong point of cooperation and support for Nigeria as well as the African continent. Recall that he had described Biden's victory as an opportunity to add value to the United States presidency and world affairs, that is. And so far, there are indications from analysts that the Biden presidency could restore cooperative links between Africa and the United States and refocus United States foreign policy on Africa.
Now, African leaders may well also be experiencing relief over a possible change in the use of aid cuts as a foreign policy and a more friendly visa regime, as well as a more targeted approach to international trade in place of the approach adopted by former President Donald Trump. Now, there is also hope that President Biden could become a unifier who would restore old alliances with countries on the African continent, especially Nigeria, and this is in spite of his predecessor's stance against Nigeria's candidacy for earlier the African Development Bank and the World Trade Organization. Although many recall that as vice president during the Obama administration, Africa and Nigeria didn't benefit much under the Obama presidency. That was when Biden was vice president.
Well, indeed, truly speaking, really, the U.S.-Nigeria relations under President Joe Biden is our first topic today, and we shall also focus on governing Nigeria's rural communities.
That's right, Nadabu. Now, the state of development in Nigeria's rural areas is having serious impact on those communities and the neighboring urban areas, affecting the standard of living, food production, and general well-being of the dwellers.
Local government areas in Nigeria have undergone several reforms since the 1950s, and today 774 of them are confronted with severe funding issues.
Now, a recent policy of government granted autonomy to the local government areas, but implementation is yet to take place in almost all the states. In reality, state governors still control their joint accounts with local government areas.
Indeed, another issue is that of elections into office in these council areas, several of which are conducted by state electoral bodies, while in some other states, governors appoint council chairmen.
Now, experts point out that there is a need for legal and administrative decentralization of authority, power, and personnel by the federal government to change the narrative that's with regard to the governance of the rural areas.
And these issues have indirectly transformed many rural communities into ungoverned spaces, giving rise to serious security concerns. Many have pointed to the traditional institutions as the beacon of hope in all this, but their inability to create the required balance has led concerned persons seeking a severe savior for Nigeria's rural communities.
So, one pertinent question to ask is, who governs Nigeria's rural communities? Now, who is responsible for the ungoverned spaces in these communities, which have been, as we are all aware, taken over in some parts by kidnappers, others by bandits, and indeed by all kinds of criminals, in particular also heavily impacting the nation's food security. We'll have guests who will be responding to these issues in our conversation segment. It's on that note, we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Yusuf Nadabo Usman. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA.
In the course of the program, we have our regular complimentary segments, and these include business and newspaper review. In the meantime, let's join Musbah Don Wahab for the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Musbah.
All right, good morning, Kingsley and Yusuf. Let's take Venice. It is a new dawn and a new day in America as Democrat Joe Biden assumes office as the 46th President of the United States of America. Biden and the Vice President Kamala Harris took the oath of office under a security-tight ceremony attended by very few dignitaries, including the Clintons, Obamas, and the immediate past Vice President Mike Pence.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris on their inauguration as President and Vice President of the United States of America on Wednesday, expressing hope that their presidency will mark our strong points of cooperation and support for Nigeria as well as the African continent. In a statement, President Buhari felicitates with the leaders and entire country on the successful transition, which marks an important historical point for democracy as a system of government and for the global community as a whole. The president says Nigeria is looking forward to the Biden presidency with great hope and optimism for strengthening of existing cordial relationships, working together to tackle global terrorism, climate change, poverty, and improvement of economic ties and expansion of trade. President Buhari and Nigerians rejoice with President Joe Biden sharing the feeling that the first woman-elected Vice President of the United States has an African and Asian ancestry. Now, a bill seeking to give a legal backing to the harmonization of retirement age of teachers in Nigeria has been approved by the Federal Executive Council. The Minister of Education, Adamu, announced this while briefing journalists after the Council's meeting described the bill as a giant step forward towards enhancing teaching and learning in the country.
The reintroduction of bursary awards, which I told you here last year, improving teacher quality, funding teaching practice now from that fund, rural posting allowance, science teacher allowance, and then of course we had the Teacher Registration Council of Nigeria, TRCN, under us that has professionalized the profession.
Newly appointed members of the Code of Conduct Bureau and Police Service Commission have been sworn in by President Muhammadu Buhari to fill existing vacancies in the critical organs of government. The swearing-in ceremony, which preceded the meeting of a Federal Executive Council, was in fulfillment of constitutional provisions.
Being invited over to a Code of Conduct Bureau means that this is an opportunity to actualize those things that have been conceptualizing. I will now be in a position to bring this thing to the doorsteps of Nigerians. This is how we should conduct ourselves. This is what the law says.
President Buhari cannot just do it alone. It will require everyone. Let us put Nigerians.
In continuation of his effort to sensitize Fulani herders and rural dwellers against the acts of banditry, a Kaduna-based Islamic scholar, Sheikh Hamad Mahmoud Gumi, has secured a truce between groups of armed bandits in some volatile areas of Birni Gwari and Jiwa local government areas of Kaduna State.
I appeal to you all to have trust in us. We will assist you in many positive ways.
I plead with you in the name of God to renounce all forms of crimes.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) has announced 1,386 new COVID-19 infections in 22 states and the FCT. In the latest figures released, Lagos recorded the highest number with 476 new cases. Rivers followed with 163. FCT has 116. Kaduna 114. Oyo 68. Plateau 62. Ogun 56, while Imo and Osun State recorded 55 new cases each. Others are 51 in Edo, 50 in Anambra, 44 in Kwara, 17 in Kano, 14 in Ebonyi. As across Rivers and Delta have 10 new cases each. Aside Jigawa, which has 8, Bayelsa and Ekiti with 6 new cases each. As Borno and Taraba recorded 2 new cases each. Zamfara has just 1 new case. The active cases at the moment are 20,877 in Nigeria. So far, Nigeria has 114,691 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with 92,336 treated and discharged patients, while 1,478 have died of the virus. And that's the news highlights on Good Morning Nigeria. The program will continue in just a moment with Kingsley and Nadabo after this break.
A scorecard like no other. Government has put in place measures and initiatives principally targeted at youths, women, and the most vulnerable groups in our society. These included a broad plan to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years, the creation of 75 billion Naira National Youth Investment Fund to provide opportunities for the youths, and the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Survivor Fund, through which government is A. Paying 3-month salaries of the staff of 100,000 micro, small and medium enterprises, businesses at the Corporate Affairs Commission. C. Giving a grant of 30,000 Naira to 100,000 artisans and guaranteeing market for the product of traders. These are in addition to many other initiatives such as farmer money, trader money, market money, N-Power, N-Tech, and N-Agro. These and more in spite of a recession and a global pandemic. Although social media as a channel of communication is inherently harmless, it becomes harmful and damaging when used without discretion and thoughtfulness. Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, reflect, and verify information before sharing it. Be a good social media user. Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source and use social media responsibly for a better Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in collaboration with the National Orientation Agency.
For over 70 years, we've practiced healthy hygiene habits together. The world needs us to keep our fight going against germs. So let's wash our hands for 20 seconds regularly. Dettol. Protect what's worth fighting for.
The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Wonderful news. The village headmaster is coming back to your screen. Mo wire abi mi o wire. Teacher no more. A fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Teacher jọ̀wọ́. A fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Ọmọ onírẹsì ti dé.
Ajebo na better school for last gidi. Not be all this on a rugged yes school for Ijabi. I don't know for you.
Second, it's called Oja Village. Kadesi, we know happy at all.
And I know that even you too, you are getting a lot of orders. Hey, we are trying, shao. Sweep her leg out. She was standing there. Sweep it.
I love you so much.
And how did I give you the impression that I was interested in that position?
50-year anniversary.
You mean anniversary?
I talk with that now.
Not for me. Not for me because of Pamio.
Here on to the program Good Morning Nigeria on Nigerian Television Authority, and this morning we shall be discussing two topics, one of which is U.S.-Nigeria relations under Biden, and of course we're going to talk about also governing the rural communities. Now let's look at the business world today. Presidential initiative that is on continuous audit commences verification of ex-co-workers of Nigeria always. Let's join Adekunle for details on business.
The Presidential Initiative on Continuous Audit PICA, Federal Ministry of Finance, in conjunction with the Ministry of Aviation, has commenced a mop-up verification exercise for ex-workers of Nigeria Airways Limited in liquidation. A statement by the Director of Press and Public Relations, Hazan Dodo, indicates that the exercise, which is the last the ministry will carry out, is meant to verify ex-workers of the defunct Nigeria Airways who had genuine claims but were yet to be paid. Director PICA Bashir Harisu Mohammed, while addressing the ex-workers, stated that the exercise was in furtherance of the federal government's determination to ensuring that all former public workers, especially those of liquidated agencies who had genuine and legitimate claims, were not denied of such. And here are the details of Wednesday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you very much, Kunle, for the business package. Coming up now is News Super Review.
As usual, Bayo Atuebi is in the house. Good morning, Bayo.
Good morning, Nadabo.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning,
Bayo,
Nigeria.
good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's, let's begin with the Nation newspaper. And a photograph there on the front page shows President-elect Joe Biden taking his oath of office as President of the United States. With him, his wife, Jill, and others. There's a headline beside that photograph says, "Stop extremism and racism, Biden tells Americans." And President pledges to work hard for all. That's there on the front page with a continuation on page 4. Now, above the nameplate, you have 3 other headlines. It says, Igbo demand, demand justice in United Nigeria. Igbo demand justice in United Nigeria. Ohaneze warns Kanu. Details can be found on page 5. FEC okays 65 years exit age and more pay for teachers. That's also on page 5. And Kanu laments tougher second wave of COVID-19. And bandits kill 7 vigilantes in Niger. Those stories are on page 6. Below the name flag, final verification of defunct Nigeria Airways workers begins. That's page 8. And the lead story says, presidency and Ondo governor headers eviction row grows. With 2 riders, lawyers, and groups back Akeredolu, North headers ask headsmen to stay. Nigeria's debt may hit 60 trillion naira, and bandits to drop arms after parley with Gumi and police. And right at the foot of the front page, Babachi Olawa's trial begins afresh, and Wike's 500 million naira to rebuild burnt Sokoto market.
And of course, on the Daily Trust, we have the following stories. Water shortage threatens dry season farming. You get the details of that on page 9, page 19. Buhari directs agencies to certify locally made helicopter. Details on page 15. The main story here is ripples over Akeredolu's quit notice to herdsmen, and the riders are directive provocative, coming from Northern Elders Forum, and then Afenifere, others, OK governor's order, and then we have a presidency not aware of our predicaments, says Ondo governor, and Ondo farmers, Mieti Allah back state government. These are the riders on that big story. We also have the trending issue, that is Biden takes the helm as U.S. president. Details on page 25. At the bottom of the Daily Trust front page, we have the following stories. Gunmen abduct mother, 2 children in Suleja. Details on page 23. On page 24, we have that story, 2023, how zoning agreement was reached in APC, says a caucus member. On page 4, FEC approves 65 as retirement age for teachers. Bayo?
Thank you, Yusuf Nadabo. Let's start with the story that has dominated the world, the coming into office of Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris as President and Vice President of the United States. Both made history yesterday. Joe Biden, the youngest to be sworn in as senator in 1973, was also sworn in yesterday as the oldest president at age 78. He won the November 3 election with the historic figure of 81.2 million and the Electoral College of 306. Kamala Harris is the first female to be vice president and also the first African Asian American to be so elected. Vice President Kamala Harris was sworn in by Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who is also the first Latin American to be sworn in at the Supreme Court. This thereby reflecting the diversity that America is trying to emphasize. President Joe Biden was sworn in by Chief Justice John Roberts and was witnessed by 3 former presidents and Vice President Mike Pence. The outgone president, Trump, broke 152 years tradition by not being part of the ceremony. President Biden called for an end to uncivil war that has divided America and ravaged the nation with coronavirus with 400,000 deaths, as well as enforced a downturn economy. He called for unity to the beginning by opening up, Americans open up their souls instead of hardening up their hearts. He says, we have learned that democracy is precious, democracy is fragile, but democracy has prevailed. The ceremony was witnessed by persons across party lines. Meanwhile, the other story which you read, Nadabo, from the Daily Trust, leaders of bandits groups in Giwa local government area of Kaduna State have pledged to Dr. Ahmed Gumi to abandon criminality. The Islamic scholar had met with various Fulani communities, suspected bandits commanders, and Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association in Kidandan, in Giwa local government area of Kaduna State. The initiative, which was started by Dr. Ahmed Gumi, also has the support of the Commissioner of Police, Kaduna State. And they have since started in January when he visited Gamagira in Soba local government area and also an outskirts in the Kaduna-Abuja highway where kidnapping has been very rampant. The initiative is yielding results, and the bandits and their commanders pledged that they are prepared to down their arms and embrace peace, provided that social amenities are provided for them in their area. In Kwara State, the Commissioner of Police has paraded a man who was arrested for organizing what they call a nude party. He had advertised on the social media that at a cost of 20,000, people could gather at a lounge, clubhouses, and service apartments for the nude party. The police posed as an interesting party. They paid the 20,000, and in the sting operation, arrested the organizer, one Mr. White, when he attempted to withdraw the money. They are going after the other members of the gang. You recall that a similar party was organized in Kaduna, and it led to demolition of a house.
It's becoming some sort of worry now.
Yes.
There was one in Adamawa, I think, in which a beach party was also, cancelled. The Kaduna case, and now you have this one coming up. So it's sort of spreading.
Yes, they're taking their fundamental human right on social media to social fundamental irresponsibility.
That's
and that's why it has to be frowned. Another one is a 20-year-old man who has been arrested conniving with a gang of kidnappers to kidnap his father and demand 2 million naira ransom. The young man is a herdsman. His father gave him 15 cows. So the gang members are his friends, and they told him that your father is rich, we can kidnap him and get money. He bought into the idea, and they arrested, they kidnapped his father, got 2 million, and gave him his share, 200,000. He's now in the police net.
But can we rush to the editorial? Because we don't have time. What's there in the editorial? Daily Trust today on borrowing from dormant accounts.
Well, this is an initiative by government to shore up revenue to carry out some of its capital projects, and also to reduce the extent of deficit budget and the elements of borrowing. But the consensus is that there are two levels. There are those who are proposing that the government should borrow from pension funds. And pensioners have been outcrying that, no, don't take our funds. And the share, you have what they call dormant accounts. Accounts that have been there and have not been operated for about 6 years. Elsewhere in other countries, the United States has it, South Africa has it. They can borrow such funds that are entrusted to government, but it's not as if they've been taken away. Next of kin of those who own the accounts can subsequently benefit from it, and they are supposed to be invested in productive ventures so that it will yield returns to those accounts. But Nigerians are of concern because the level of confidence, whether these monies, if they are used, the owners will get them back, has become a matter of question. But there are organizations, particularly the Shareholders Association, who are frowning seriously at this. They think that rather than them taking the dormant account, they should rather have the account go to, and the shareholders account, go to the shareholders trust fund account, which should be opened so that it can be revolved until the owners, the next of kin, will come and take them. Well, it's an issue of confidence.
Well, yeah, that's right. But that's what you're saying is when we're talking about events.
Yes.
Because already in the Finance Act 2020, the provision is there with regard to unclaimed dividends and dormant balances in dormant accounts. And yesterday on Good Morning Nigeria, we had the Honorable Minister of Finance as one of the guests who joined us in discussing this issue. She provided the background as to why the government has taken this decision and what needs to be done, and also allaying the fears that have been raised with regard to the efficient management of the funds accruing therefrom. But that critically, the beneficiaries of either unclaimed dividends or dormant accounts, that is, beneficiaries, whether direct beneficiaries or heirs or successors entitled, will have, at all times, have access to those funds whenever they do call for it. So the critical point there is what she has explained. The concerns are still there. We hope that going forward, whenever those concerns come up, they can be dealt with. All right, if you recall, what part of the grounds earlier had been with borrowing from the pension funds. That had been a concern, but this is now also been explained. All right, Baya Tebe, we'd like to thank you for being around. We'll see you again tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live, as always, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll commence our conversation segment.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youth, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Do you know that 35% of every girl child and women are raped on a daily basis? Some are killed in the process, some take their lives in shame, others remain emotionally dead for life. It is sad. This culture is not ours, definitely not African. How did we allow bad culture to infiltrate and take over? Even if you lack fear for the law, what of fear of God? And you, why do you cover up rape acts when it happens? Remember, a problem shared is a problem half solved. Never cover any rape act because a rapist is a murderer. It could be you or your loved ones next. Women must be treated like the prize gem they are. Say no to rape.
Every day.
Nestle, good food, good life.
And to begin our discussion on U.S.-Nigeria relations under Joe Biden, let's take this background report put together by Joy Someto.
It is the 46th presidential inauguration of the United States of America, the country that is recognized as a home of democracy. The inauguration of Joe Biden and his vice, Kamala Harris, has added 3 new pages in the history of America. The first is Joe Biden being the oldest person to emerge as the president at 78. Another history is Kamala Harris becoming the first female to occupy the office of the American vice president. And the third is their inauguration conducted in a restrictive environment without the usual 250,000 invitees.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans, all Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did.
Ahead of the swearing-in ceremony, the outgone President Donald Trump vacated the White House. He was honored with 21 gun salutes before leaving the seat of power, and he wished the new administration well as he left a note for the new occupant of the House. The major task before the new administration is fulfilling its campaign promises as the world awaits foreign and trade policies that will be introduced by Biden and his cabinet.
Many thanks, Joyce Ometu, for that backgrounder. And by the way, just to indicate that it wasn't the 46th inauguration of a U.S. president, but the 46th president to be sworn into office. Now, joining us to discuss matters arising from all of this is our regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. He was with us, of course, when the election results were announced last November, and of course, the consequences that then followed upon its rejection by former President Donald Trump. So we have with us in the studios now the former Nigerian Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, currently directing staff of the Nigerian Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies at Kuru, near Jos, Ambassador Usman Sarki. Excellency, pleasure to have you with us again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, sir. Great pleasure to be with you again. Okay. Thank you.
You are smiling this morning.
No, you know, he has been smiling since yesterday because he was on our program yesterday, the special on the inauguration.
So it must be some tremendous relief, I mean, for diplomats all around the world. But let me put this to you. You find that there are all kinds of jibes when events of this nature happen. Yes. There was a T-shirt that was produced and said, "The end of an era." Yeah. E-R-R-O-R. Yes, yes, the end of an era, yes, and the beginning of a new era. Yes. Do this substantially capture what we saw yesterday, the exit of Donald Trump, and the inauguration of Joe Biden?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning Nigeria. Well, it was deemed as an error, an aberration, actually, the election of Donald Trump in 2016. It was out of the norm. He came from virtually nowhere with no antecedents or backgrounds in terms of public service, stormed his way into politics, and before you knew it, he was there as the president. And he conducted the government in a tumultuous way for the 4 years that bewildered not only Americans, but the whole world, actually. And in the process, he denigrated the essential substance of the United States of America in terms of its standing in the world, its relationship with allies, and also its position as the leading power that emerged supremely at the end of the Cold War. And a lot of goodwill was dissipated through the erratic behavior of the president who left office, that is Donald Trump. So Americans, actually, a lot of Americans who are used to normalcy in governance woke up to a situation where actually they were governed by Twitter and also in a very aggressive and irrational way. And that became a problem, not only to Americans, but to the rest of the world. So if you read the message of Mr. President, our president, which was read today, this morning, actually it was a very warm, felicitation to the new president in terms of the expectations and hope that Nigeria actually looks forward to in relationship with the United States and with the new president. And I think similar messages from other world leaders will echo this sentiment of relief and opening of a better and new chapter in the relationship of their countries and the United States. So I think everybody should smile. There is no threat of war. There is no threat of irrational action against any country or other people. There are no executive orders banning certain groups or types of people going into the United States, or unilateral sanctions against countries for no apparent reason. So it is a good thing. History corrects itself, actually. And when you allow history to correct itself, obviously and inadvertently, it becomes something that is a lesson to generations, to come. So what we are going to actually learn from this episode is that institutions and individuals manning institutions matter greatly in a democracy or in any other type of governance in order to keep the system going, functioning and working and delivering on its promises. So I think these are the ideas that one could draw from what happened yesterday and the general ambience of the feelings of people, as of this morning.
But indeed, really, as you just rightly said, when I heard you yesterday analyzing the issues at the inauguration and the rest of them,
yes.
In his speech, Joe Biden said he really wants to see a new world here with America playing its real role as it used to be, not in the past 4 years. And when we look at what really happened between yesterday evening in Nigeria and of course to this morning, and I think it's going to go into some few days to come, given the messages that will be reaching Joe Biden in terms of congratulations and the rest of them, we seem to say, we may say that there is some hope in what Joe Biden said, that he's trying to rebuild alliances and get Africa and indeed the world back into where it is supposed to be, in the U.S. playing its own role. How do you see these alliances being built in the very short time?
Well, alliances will be built by persuasion and conviction that his outreach to the world, re-engagement with the world, is sincere and genuine. And I think nobody will doubt President Biden about his honesty, integrity, and his ability to build alliances. He has been in the United States Senate for nearly 40 years and vice president for 8 years. And remember, he was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. And for that reason, I think he virtually knows the whole world like the back of his hand. He has known world leaders, he has known leaders from all parts of the world, and he has known the workings of international institutions. So to my mind, I think his first outreach will be to the NATO countries, the North Atlantic Alliance, where a lot of damage, systemic damage, has been inflicted on their relationship by Donald Trump. And then he will reach out to countries like Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, and others in Asia and the Far East, in terms of rebuilding the trust between those countries and the United States, particularly in terms of the unilateral imposition of certain payments for the protection of those countries, which was imposed by Donald Trump. For instance, South Korea was expected to pay $5 billion, dollars virtually every year for the presence of U.S. troops. The same thing with Japan. So, and then the trade deals that actually, Donald Trump pulled America out of. And he tried to impose new ones that actually, caused consternation to a lot of countries, will be looked at again by President Biden to bring a more rational sense into the arrangement, whereby you will have a live and let live type of arrangement with those countries. But fundamentally, President Biden will look at the entire landscape, the global landscape, and see where is missing, what is missing, and where, First, he will pay attention to global climate change. The Paris, climate change, conference that Donald Trump pulled America out of the COP 21 or 22, I think, and also re-engage with the United Nations in terms of carrying forward countries towards fulfilling their commitments and mandates in terms of meeting the mitigation agenda of the climate change. And secondly, I think he will look at the perhaps reviving global arms, reduction or arms controlling treaties like with Russia, and possibly start a new negotiation with China in order to de-escalate the growing expenditure in armaments and the arms race, which is virtually fading from the international picture, but is there as an incubus weighing heavily on the defense budgets of many countries. And I think he will cooperate with African countries like Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon, and others in terms of fighting, terrorism and restoring the supremacy of human rights, the protection and promotion of human rights as essential cornerstone of American policy in Africa and other parts of the world. So these are the things that we should look forward to. I understand yesterday he signed a number of executive orders repealing or actually repudiating the earlier policies, imposed on America and the world by President Donald Trump. This is a good beginning, a good sign that there are new things, fresh, things to come. As for America, he said he wants to unite, to really rebuild the soul of the country and bring different, factions, the divides much closer and narrower, in order to have a United States. Today, the United States is really figuratively not a United States, but a divided state, and he wants to unite. As a father figure, 78 years old man, he knows the importance of consensus. He knows the importance of unity and accommodation. And I think he will work assiduously to that.
And when you say...
Sorry, Notable. Ambassador Sarki just made a very critical point in addition to what he said earlier. And I'm concerned about this for good reason, as of course you should be. When President Biden spoke yesterday, he spoke to Americans and then he also spoke to the world.
Yes.
But he has assumed his presidency under very challenging circumstances. America, of course, is the epicenter of coronavirus. America is battling with racism like never before. America is also battling with extremism, and America is battling with economic challenges. And you very well know that the management of domestic policies and issues can impact on your foreign policy focus. So while the rest of the world may be applauding and say, well, this is a new dawn, can we moderate our expectations? Because we never can tell what just might happen, say, well, elsewhere in the world or in the U.S. itself, that could then consume the greater attention of the new president.
Well, thank you very much. That is an excellent point. President Biden promised to spend $1.93 trillion as stimulus immediately, a stimulus package in the country. That expenditure will not allow him to, for instance, increase foreign aid or to actually increase the maintenance of American bases, in Africa or other countries. So obviously the expenditure at home and the massive challenge he is going to face in terms of facing the coronavirus disease and actually vaccinating 100 million Americans in 100 days, as he promised, will occupy much of his time. And that will entail perhaps reducing expectations in terms of engagement with the rest of the world. At the policy level, the engagement will continue, reviews will be made, new systemic arrangements can be put in place, but at the substantive material level, I think we should expect the minimum and perhaps hope for the maximum in terms of our expectations. So, for instance, will America increase its aid to Africa, which has fallen from around $146 billion in 2014 to around, around 80 billion in 2019? We don't know because the resources may not be there. Will American businesses invest in Africa more? We don't know because the government has to nudge them in terms of giving them the confidence and assurance that all is well in Africa, go and invest. So these are things that only time can tell. But essentially, the domestic priorities will be foremost in the minds of the administration, and while at the same time, the foreign policy will be simply to mend fences, restore and recover lost ground, and perhaps build up, show up confidence with partners and the rest of the world. For instance, how will Joe Biden engage with China? This is a critical foreign policy and also a domestic policy issue for them. Trump actually, unhinged American relationship virtually with China, and in the process imposed sanctions and also delisted a number of Chinese companies from the stock exchange and so forth. These were hostile moves. But today, we don't know if Joe Biden will continue cautiously with this policy or radically alternate, the scenario and re-engage with China. So these are things that will be looked at as time goes on incrementally for the administration to establish itself and its priorities. So your question was very correct in terms of challenges at home. Can foreign policy be pursued effectively? I think they will balance the two. But with the domestic situation, which is virtually an emergency situation, taking preponderance over foreign policy considerations. But at the same time, I think they will re-engage with Mexico, review their approach and policy towards Venezuela and the rest of Latin America, because this is really the first priority of each U.S. administration engaging with Mexico, Venezuela, Latin America, Brazil, and Central America. So I think the most effective foreign policy outcome we should see is the review of the relationship with Mexico, which has been virtually shattered by the Trump administration, and perhaps to look at the situation in Venezuela again, to accept the fait accompli in that country and work with the Maduro government and not actually trying to overthrow it.
Excellency, let's turn our attention to Africa and then see how this will really play out. Not forgetting the fact that Joe Biden has been Obama's, vice for 8 years. Yes. And during that time, 8 years through, we didn't see anything tangible coming to Africa from that regime per se. And here we are today, being at the helm of affairs, himself the president, and talking about foreign policy and Africa's benefit, Nigeria specifically in this regard. How do you see him, tilting towards Africa in trying to, mend, ties, bring benefit, and then create some mutual, relationship that will, be beneficial to all and indeed to the world?
Well, his nominee as Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, is actually very familiar with Africa. He has visited Nigeria before, he has visited many African countries, and he knows Africa very well. The team he's putting together, I think Susan Rice will be there. There is Linda Thomas Greenfield will be there. These are people who know Africa very well. In fact, they have visited and lived in this continent for many years. So there will be a change of narrative in the administration towards Africa. But how far this change of narrative will be, only time will tell. And also how effectively we ourselves as Africans communicate our expectations, our desires, and our hopes to the American administration. It is not a one-way traffic. Diplomacy is a two-way traffic. It's between the actors. You know, they have to engage, communicate, and dialogue in terms of establishing confidence and their priorities. Where you have egregious human rights violation, where you cannot control your territory, where there are spaces that are ungoverned and taken over by bandits and criminals and terrorists, where civil wars will be raging or armed gangs will be rampaging around, you cannot expect to go and sit with the Americans and speak creditably and for them to take you very seriously. Administrations in Africa must be organized around viable institutions, around respect for law and order, around respect and promotion for human rights, around establishing the dignity of the human person as the fundamental essence of governments, around ensuring the effectiveness of security in countries. Then you can go and sit down with America or any other country as a credible actor and discuss with them the possibilities of interest that you want to articulate. So under a situation of chaos, uncertainty, disorganization, when you go to the Americans, all they can do is to say, okay, we will look into what you are going to do, what we will do for you. That is all. You will not get the promissory note that will effectively translate into currency, into assistance. But there are two things that the President Biden said he will do in terms of, reaching out to the rest of the world, for which Nigeria and Africa should prepare. First, he said he will convene a summit for democracy. I think we should go there prepared in terms of outlining our fundamental objectives in terms of achieving and consolidating democracy in Africa. This is very important. The rule of law, constitutionality, and other things, human rights and so forth, are important. So we should go there with a credible position. The second summit he will actually convene is Global Security Summit. We have a stake in that. As a country confronting terrorist actions and internal challenges in the area of security, we should go to that summit prepared in terms of what to deliver to the world in terms of our needs and expectations, and how we can contribute to the maintenance of international security in accordance with the UN Charter.
Ambassador Saki, very important points that President Biden has outlined for U.S.-Africa relations, of which Nigeria, of course, is potentially a beneficiary. And you've also talked about what Nigeria and Africa would need to do. Just looking at the broad labels of global security and democracy, there are attendant issues to all of this, which sometimes, if not sufficiently addressed, but also create bottlenecks towards the realization of the ultimate goals. I'll give you an example. Very little is talked about in terms of trade between Nigeria and the U.S. We have seen, for instance, that our major item of trade, which is oil, has diminished considerably. When President Clinton came up with AGOA, Nigeria benefited very little from it, or Nigeria took very little advantage of it. Other countries such as Lesotho and I think Rwanda took maximum advantage of it. Earlier you were saying, look, will President Biden be in a position to give assurance to American investors that Africa is safe? Is it possible for, say, Nigeria and indeed other leading economies on the African continent to begin to articulate trade positions with the U.S. to ensure that the African continent becomes a more attractive environment for investment, such as happened with outsourcing to China? If you recall, some decades ago, American companies were all relocating to China for production, cheap labor costs and so on and so forth, and now China, of course, has become a global economic power. But the same thing they did with Vietnam. You see how Vietnam has grown considerably. Could we make Africa much more attractive, especially now against the background of the African Free Continental Free Trade Area, where we have been told that all we'll be doing will be selling goods produced from outside of the continent? Could Africa, and particularly Nigeria, position herself to say, look, come, come and invest with us. Of course, as we are coming to invest with us, help us also deal with the issues of banditry, terrorism, and other global security issues, plus the democracy that you talked about.
Yes. Well, Africa can be a hub of investment for America, American companies, and also American businesses, but only if we actually put some factors, some conditions on the ground. For instance, it's very important for us to realize that investors do not want to come and operate in climate or circumstances of uncertainty. They want assurances and guarantees. There are African countries that are providing the conducive atmosphere and climate for investment and business. Morocco is one, Egypt is one, Senegal is one, Ghana, Rwanda, Botswana, South Africa, Mauritius, Seychelles, Ethiopia, and others, Kenya. All these countries are actually proving to be magnets for foreign investment. When we look at Nigeria, to be honest with you, if you are, Mr. Osadulo, if you are a foreigner, an American, or even as a Nigerian, knowing as a journalist how the situation internally is, will you feel free and ready to come and invest your money in this country? After looking at the circumstances, you will hesitate. Why? Because of perception created in your mind about circumstances internally. Lack of electricity power is a major challenge. Situation like infrastructure challenges, when you cannot clear your goods in the ports in 2 weeks, and even if they are cleared, you cannot transport them out of Lagos to the destination in another 2 weeks. When there are bottlenecks which are really bewildering and mind-boggling, bureaucratic, security and so forth. So the challenges internally must be ameliorated, must be corrected and removed before you will now expect the investor to come. They still do come into the oil industry, mostly the offshore industry. They go there. They are a bit secure over there relatively, and they know the returns on investment will be high. But in other areas, industrialization cannot take place when you don't have the infrastructure. Transportation, nobody will come and invest in your railways when they don't know over what period they are going to get returns on their investment. So trade is essential. Possibly the African Continental Free Trade Arrangement, if we put it well, package it well, and administer it correctly, it may remove those impediments that have so far hindered the increase of investment in Africa. So this is what we should look forward to.
Okay, many thanks, Ambassador Usman Sarki, for talking to us this morning.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's a great
Ambassador Sarki is a former Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria to the United States and a Directing Staff, Nigerian Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies, Kuru, near Jos. We'll now take a break. We take, after the break, we'll now come back to discuss our second topic of this program this morning. Stay with us.
Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white cloths, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it. Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white cloths, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it.
Every day.
Nestle, good food, good life.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the game changer, His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State. Broadcasting in a digital economy, Maxwell Lobo gives an insight. This edition also features Nancy Naji of AIT, a name synonymous with business. Meet expert, the NCDC boss, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also x-rays the relevance of social media in the modern society. Meet some TV professionals who have impacted their spaces and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
And now to our second issue for the day on Good Morning Nigeria, and that is governing Nigeria's rural communities. Before we bring in our guests, let's take this background report by Oyemi Ajayi.
Nigeria is a country with 3 tiers of government: the federal, known as the central, the state, and the local government. There are 774 local government areas, and each headed by the local government chairman. The local government is described as that closest to the grassroots, as well as the link to the people. Over the years, arguments have been that local government authorities have not made much impact on rural communities, and the dividends of democracy, as much opportunities meant for the rural communities, are denied. Some have argued that this is due to the usurping of financial autonomy of these council areas by the state governments. This is in spite of the federal government's policy granting local governments financial autonomy, giving them sole access to their funds. This has made it impossible for most of these local government areas to function effectively. How best can governance at the rural areas be felt by the people? How can the local government be truly impactful? These are some of the questions guests already seated will be providing answers to shortly.
All right, many thanks, Oyemi Ajayi, for that backgrounder. We have 4 guests with us this morning, and they are all regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. First, let's welcome the former Deputy Governor of Abia State, Dr. Chris Akumas. Your Excellency, delighted to have you with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, also here with us in the studios is a security risk management expert, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Dr. Adamu, delighted to have you this morning.
Good morning.
Okay.
And also joining us in our Kaduna studio is the former Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs and now Commissioner for Sports Development, Kaduna State. He is also a Professor of Political Science. Kabiru Mato is a popular name we know. You're welcome, sir.
Very much. Good morning.
Very much. And the joining us from Benin studio is a 2-time chairman of Uhun Wode local government area in Edo State and pioneer chairman of Edo State chapter of the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, that is Algon, Dr. Isaiah Osifo. Thank you for making out time for us today.
Good morning.
All right, gentlemen, delighted to have you with us. You are all familiar with expressions that we have heard in recent years, namely so-called ungoverned spaces. You hear that kidnappers are in the bush or in the forest. We also get to hear that bandits launch their raids from the forest. These forests, of course, belong to rural communities. And some experts have also drawn attention to a very serious phenomenon these days, which is rural-urban drift and the growth of informal settlements or shanties. Those, of course, who live in the Federal Capital Territory have seen the growth of shanties in and around the Abuja city itself, those who are in Lagos and indeed other urban areas, which has given rise to the question as to why there appears to be the poor governance of our rural communities. Let's get the first salvo from Dr. Chris Akumas. What's happening?
Thank you very much, Councillor. It's a big problem, big challenge. We are talking about what we see are the effects, but we seem to forget that something gave rise to the situation. The rural communities or rural areas, as we know it, is actually the base for all that we do. And if you take it from the point of looking at local government governance and councils, that is where is the nucleus of everything. Talk about agriculture, talk about education, talk about health, talk about human capital development, and then the issue of social amenities and infrastructure development. Why did I say it's the root of the problem? We forgot to continue with the strengthening of that tier of governance. And we even went further as we continued to tinker and amend our constitutions to remove the handlers of our rural communities, the traditional institutions and rulers. There are administrative systems at that level. And so we seem to have not given that support for them to operate effectively. Everybody talks about the money that goes and how it goes, when in actual fact, a local government fund goes more to the payment of teachers' salaries, teachers that may not even be the kind of teachers or that should have been, and then those that are much more overbloated, and that places a burden. And most times I say to myself, any local government, any state, any government that engages unqualified or under trained, half-baked professional civil servants, whatever, at that point, is actually doing more harm to the system, not just the localities, to the whole system. So the local administration have been like, okay, we have somebody that answers local government chairman. Time they were that local government administration was really effective and good to the people, gave confidence. But these days, the local government chairman is actually there with the councillors to, make the people feel that sense of belonging, see things happening. But these days, what we see are local government areas, except for few, that all they do is come at the end of the month, whatever trickles down from the Abuja, allocation, they just appropriate it and go home. So the governance space is open in the sense that nobody is actually touching directly. Then the state comes with, few development programs and social amenities, maybe electricity, rural electrification, some roads and all that. Then some local governments will once or twice in a year just do some road grading of feeder roads within, and nobody talks about what happens with. So effectively, that point where we are supposed to capture the majority of our people in all the areas and aspects have been left bare. And focus is on, and then even the local government chairman and everybody and the states are looking at what is it that I'll do now so that people will be clapping for me. Nobody is actually thinking of what we do that can sustain the system. Prioritization, I have always said, has been the bane of our, governance. And especially at the local government level, it's like you just do what you want. So when nature abhors vacuum, when you have such vacuum, when people don't feel that there is an authority that they can rely upon, they will create their own system. It could be good, it could be bad. And unfortunately for us, what we have is more of bad than good.
Well, many thanks, Dr. Chris. At least the insight has been made and then put straight. Dr. Kabir Adamu, security may be one of the prompts for this topic because, when we look at the security situation, most of these bandits, robbery, kidnappings and whatever took place in the rural communities. And even this morning when I was just coming over to this place on BBC, I had, got some, startling news, if I may say, perplexing news, really, from a woman that was talking about the whereabouts of her husband, her children, and in far northwest. Who is really governing these areas? When we look at this situation from the background of security, whenever there is a problem like this, the local government chairman in that story said, of course, they are doing everything possible after the whole town has been ransacked, and then nobody's there, then the security men jumped in. But you can't hear much more than that always. It's after it has happened that you hear authorities coming in. Who is governing that place?
Not to repeat what my elder here has mentioned, but I align with him totally. The 3 tiers of government are clarified. If theoretically the local government chairman should have administrative control over his location, theoretically, but the reality of where we are today has been painted by him clearly. Now, to give context to the example you gave, this is a location in Maradung in Zamfara State that, according to the current report we have, was attacked at 9 a.m. And the attack continued from that 9 a.m. till 1 p.m. And according to the report, 30 people were slaughtered. They were not shot, they were slaughtered. Now, the bestiality of that attack, the fact that these bandits came in broad daylight on a market day and then used whatever it was to slaughter the people between the hours of 9 and 1 without adequate response, I think paints a clear situation of the lack of governance that was painted earlier on at the local government level. And we can give a lot of explanation, reasons behind it, but I want to capture one significant point, which is our constitution. Like, security is in the exclusive list. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, there are reasons, historical reasons, why we have that. But unfortunately, the reality, the demands of today makes that situation almost untenable because people live in those locations and the security agencies are stretched. Now, it would be very unfair not to mention that security vote, as an example, is given to the state government. And I know that trickled down somehow to the local government chairman. And I know that there are various other levels of support given by both the state government and the federal government to the security institutions for them to exercise security at that level. But the reality is, because there is no accountability, what kind of monitoring and evaluation mechanisms do we have in place? In my village, as an example, in Sokoto in Ndugundaji, if I go there today and I'm in an emergency situation and I call any of the security agencies, how many of them will I be able to rally around? Probably less than 10. When you have bandits in sometimes between 100 to 500 coming to attack locations. So in direct answer to your question, yes, the responsibility is on the chairman, theoretically. But what of the authority? Unfortunately, the authority is not with him. The authority for security lies in Abuja. Even though somehow, and that's the lacuna in the constitution, there is some money given to the state government to exercise some level of control. There are several ramifications of this point I made. You talked about the forest reserves. As far as I know, constitutionally, those forest reserves belong to the state. Authority for them belong to the state. However, the national parks, authority is at the federal level. And we know there are pockets of national parks here and there across the country. But the majority of the challenge we're having, a lot of them are in this forest reserve. So where you have a situation where the Constitution, for instance, gives exclusive authority for security, as it were, to the federal government, but then you now have this challenge, then I guess the way forward is collaboration, better collaboration between the various levels of government at the federal, the state, and at the local level. It's not as easy as I'm making it sound. I know President Buhari's administration has made almost a priority to especially the financial autonomy. But then what of the other aspects? The capacity for this local government chairman to exercise the governance responsibility on them. It's almost lacking, frankly. So it's a huge problem, and I'm really, really happy that NTA as an organization is focusing on this. If we're going to get it right, those are issues that need to be improved upon. The current focus on the federal level, we need to reduce that significantly so that at both the state and the local government level. I mean, we can look at models across the world, democracies that are advanced, some of which we are copying from. How do they exercise theirs? Are they doing it the way we're doing ours? We can't continue in this manner and hope to have a change. If we're going to have a change, these are issues that I think we need to focus on, emphasize these aspects so that humanity, or governance as it were, which is the focus of our discussion, can be improved at that level that has been described as the nucleus of our existence in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adamu. Let's go over to our Kaduna Network Center, where we earlier introduced Professor Kabir Mato, who at some point was Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs in Kaduna State. Of course, is now Commissioner in charge of social sports development. Professor Kabir Mato, look, there's probably no doubt that governance and authority in rural Nigeria have broken down. What has happened and how can it be fixed?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I think we need to trace this, from a historical perspective. It is not, uncommon to say that the attention that previous governments in this country have given to rural development has been very lacking. That's one area. Secondly, also, and very fundamentally, is the apparent unwillingness on the part of the Nigerian elites, especially that find themselves in privileged positions, to appreciate the fact that injustice to one is injustice to all. This, in my view, has led severally to condemnation and failure on the part of successive states' administration to be able to effectively, especially the federal state, implement meaningful policies that will see, to the evolution of vibrant rural Nigeria, where education facilities such as electricity, pipe-borne water, roads, etc., are provided as the basic foundation upon which any rural development will be realized. This, in my view, has taken place over a very long period of time, especially, beginning with military rule in 1976 when we had the local government reforms, and where the powers and functions of the traditional institutions, especially in those sections of this country where they played very fundamental roles in governance, was severely eroded, and therefore delegitimizing whatever activities that they carried out, and entrusting such activities in the hands of civil political authorities that we today refer to as local government councils, and in my view, the local government councils have not been able to efficiently and effectively discharge their responsibilities of enhancing rural development in their capacities as government that is nearest to the people at the grassroots level. This is one fundamental area. So, if we take the issue of the manner in which successive states at the center have given attention or priority to rural development, we will see that there's a very serious gap, and that has contributed very tremendously in the creation of several ungoverned spaces as we have in Nigeria today, especially in the northern part of this country where, there are series of very thick forests, throughout the region, and therefore uninhabited by the population, giving rise, and sanctuary to these criminals and bandits, take control and continue to terrorize the rest of society. Now, secondly, I think one of the most important things that we need to take into consideration here again has to do with the fact that we keep shouting about the need for restructuring. If we need to get these ungoverned spaces actually covered by administrations in this country, there is a need to restructure the country in such a way that local administration will be placed in the hands of perhaps the states. And that's why I give credence to the national conference that was organized by the former President Goodluck Jonathan, which recommended that there was a need for the abrogation of the third level of government, which is the local government, not abrogation per se, but removing it from the constitution because it's currently not well taken care of by the various provisions. The local government, tier of government, in my view, is not sufficiently empowered by the constitution to play any fundamental role apart from the discharge of these residual responsibilities that are being attached to it. The local government councils cannot function without laws being made by the state houses of assembly, etc., etc. So functionally, the local government councils are not as autonomous as we thought. It's not an issue of financial autonomy, which I've always seen as the cries by the Nigerian elites to simply democratize corruption by the fact that the federal government enjoys its relative autonomy as far as its resources are concerned, similarly with the state government, and so the local government council should also have it. I think we need to develop a framework of administration in our respective communities to suit our peculiarities and characteristics. This has been taken away from it. And this is one of the ironies of the Nigerian federal structure. We say we are a federation where you have a center, you have units of the federation, which are the states, and then you also have, you want to design a local government structure that cut across the 36 states of the federation and the federal capital territory. It's impossible under that scenario to be able to have an effective system of administration that will be able to cover, throughout and provide for the local populations whatever their requirements and expectations are. We're in this country, for instance, again, in the middle of the 1980s when Professor Jibril Aminu, for instance, brought up the idea of nomadic education, and it was severely criticized by a certain segment of the Nigerian elites. It was perceived as if it was a program that was specifically designed to favor a section of the country, and in this case, the Fulani nomads. Because the realization of the fact that these are basically cattle rearers that were not engaged in any particular activities. They hardly will go to school. They are not farmers. They are not traders. And we woke up in the morning and found that these cattle have been roasted. Even if they have not been roasted, the reality of our economic situation has made it impossible for a substantial number of these young Fulani people to have these cattle to rear. And therefore, the alternative or the option that is open to them without Western education, without Islamic education, is to engage in the form of banditry and other criminal activities that we see happening today. And then we keep wondering that the only way we can resolve this problem perhaps is by engaging them through the employment of many security, officials. And, it is very obvious in, the social theory that it's impossible for you to have peace and security in any environment without effective social order in that particular society. So social justice is fundamental. Now, this continues to, rage in this country. And as long as, governments do not take it as a matter of priority to ensure that we come up deliberately with effective policies to ensure that rural areas are developed in such a manner that not just development in terms of the manner in which rural feeder roads are constructed, or, potable water is taken down the rural communities, etc., but ensuring that education cuts across every nook and cranny of this country, and ensuring also that if, for instance, in the 1960s, those of us who grew from the rural areas were able to find basically everything in our primary schools that, were found in the urban centers, I wonder what really has gone wrong today, that you move to substantial portions of our rural areas and you see that technically nothing serious happens, both in our areas of education and even the infrastructure in terms of electricity, potable water, etc., and roads that have been said to be, been put in place by successive states. So, ungoverned spaces will continue to exist in this country as long as governments do not pay attention, and very serious attention, on the need to provide the enabling environment for the peoples in the rural areas, and especially groups such as the Fulanis, the opportunity to have decent education and also participate in the economic activities within their localities. This, in my view, contributes significantly, and of course also restructure the country in such a manner that you provide enabling framework for every section of the country to come up with suitable method of rural administration that will be able to perhaps empower the various institutions that we have in place. That is why when colonialism came to Africa, came to Nigeria in particular, it found readily in place in this part of Nigeria the institution of traditional rulers that it used effectively to administer, the largest segment of the Nigerian Federation, which is the northern part of this country, and to some extent in the southwestern part of the country. So we do not have any choice. There is no need insisting that these things have to continue in a manner that it is. It looks more like a unitary configuration than a federal system. We have our various peculiarities. Why is it that it's always, in Kaduna, for instance, what we have done in the last 5 years has been to try to restructure the local government administrative system and also to structure the traditional institution by ensuring that they play those roles that they were previously, playing during colonial rule and after independence.
Hello, many thanks, Dr. Kabiru Mato. At least the points have been made there. Let us hear from Dr. Isaiah Osifo. Dr. Isaiah Osifo, you were a chairman of a local government at least 2 times, and of course you headed Algon in Edo State. And if you had been following us, there are suggestions for the, having those traditional rulers back in place. And then there are suggestions of trying to really strengthen the autonomy being given to, local governments. But the fact still remains that today, if you go to a local government, once the chairman is not there, nobody is there. That's just basic. And if he's there, normally the whole activities, revolve around his office. And if he goes out, that's the end of the story and the work stops. Same thing happens when the money is being brought at the end of the month. Maybe it's for a month or for a week or 2, and that's the activity there. And by the end of 1-2 weeks, that ends the story. Now, what's really happening at the local government? Would you say that the autonomy needs to be strengthened, or is not really working? Or how do we get these local governments working? You've been there twice, and you've headed the local government chairman.
Thank you very much. Let us establish a general platform for simple understanding of this concept, whether autonomy or non-autonomy of local government. The platform that I have always recommended is that in developing countries such as Nigeria, and in most developing democracy, the focus of development should be development from below. That is to say, if you are a developing country, you are not emphasizing the grassroots, the foundation of the nation, you're not going to have a sustainable development. And the foundation of any nation is the local government, the people at the grassroots. So, for us to have a sustainable development in Nigeria, we need a strong local government in Nigeria. And now let me quickly say that I listened to the professor about unitary system and federalism. The provisions in the 1999 Constitution as amended are sufficiently defined in terms of realizing the federal nature of the Nigerian state. The Constitution did not impose a structure of the local government on any state. Section 7, Section 1 said, the system of local government shall be by democracy. Therefore, in Kaduna State, your local government should be democracy. It is not an imposition, it is a right of the people at the grassroots to elect those who should be their council, but you can decide on how to conduct your election. Different from what is going to be done in Edo or in Lagos or in Bauchi. But the problem we have, how many state governments in Nigeria have been able to conduct a free and fair election? They have state electoral commission in the constitution. They do selections, they do not do election. There are some states for 8 years, they have a caretaker. And if you're talking of development, you're talking of security. Where there's an alienation of government from the people, how are you going to have development when you select unwanted persons to be administrators at the local level? How are you going to cultivate the goodwill, the input of the people towards that development that will bring about prosperity and security of the locality? So if you are talking about security problem in the locality, the first problem is that you are imposing on them those that are not even wanted. If the people elect their councillors, they elect their chairman in the local government, and they know that they gave them the mandate to govern that particular area, I believe sure there will be a moral support for that system of government. So the constitutional provision in section 7.1, 7.3, section 8.3 are enough for the state government to exploit to have this type of local government that they want to have. So nobody is imposing any structure of local government on any state. But there's an abuse of the system by governors in Nigeria. They abuse the local government system. They prove that they know more than the local government. But this is not true because many local government chairmen are better equipped administratively than even more than some governors in Nigeria. But they abuse the system. They do not allow election. They don't allow them to perform. They usurp their resources. They usurp their power. And they become to cast blame on the local government. So until we realize that we need to implement, if we are asking for restructuring, we should first implement the provisions of the constitution that we have at hand. That makes us responsible citizens of Nigeria. If you don't implement what you have now, how are you going to implement the one that they're going to give to you when they restructure? Why can't governors conduct election? Why can't governors have a system of democracy that we harness and cultivate the people and give support to development and security in their local areas? So 3 basic categories are: 1, constitutional provisions as we have it today in Nigeria, they are enough to provide a suitable and effective local government system if the governors will obey the provisions of the Constitution of Nigeria. The functions of local government, as explicitly stated in the 1st schedule of the Constitution, the local government is a partner of the other 2 tiers of government. What the local government should do are listed in 4th schedule of the Nigerian Constitution. So if we obey the Constitution, we'll be getting close to having an effective local government system. Secondly, resources. I hear about, somebody mentioned about 1976 local government reform. It would be ironical, and maybe it will interest people to know that in terms of resources for the local government, the military have done better than the civil administration. The 1976 local government reform was made to ensure in realizing, Obasanjo Yar'Adua knew the effectiveness of a strong local government system. Then we're not even talking about autonomy now. We're talking about a strong local government system that will be there for everybody. That was the focus and the essence of 1976 local government reform. It was good. The local government were functioning. The federal military government was supporting in terms of resources to this level of government. And things were good in the local government level. Even Babangida local government reform. Look at all the reforms of Babangida. Babangida brought about democracy into the local government, where you don't have councillors different from supervisors. Babangida reform, Dasuki Commission and committee report was so suitable for all the 774 local government areas in Nigeria. Then even the Sani Abacha that people criticize for whatever reason had a better relationship with the local government than the present civil democracy that we have. So when you, in 1999 to date, which is over 20 years, we are still operating the old revenue allocation formula. You give federal government 52% of the revenue, you give 36 states 26%, and you give 774 local government 80% of the revenue. Now, if you give them that pittance that is just even enough to His Excellency, the former Deputy Governor, he mentioned a point. The resources that you give to the local government cannot even pay salaries of teachers. It is deducted as source. As the money is coming from Abuja, it is removed as source to pay private schools. Some don't even have ₦1 left in their account from the federation account resources that are sent to them. And you employ these teachers, the local government is not responsible for the employment of these teachers. They are not responsible for their transfer or discipline, but they pay their salaries. So when you employ them, you give them that burden, you take 101% of their resources from Abuja, from a federal account, to pay just one sector of the local community, which is primary school teacher. Of course, primary education is very, very important. Why have federal and state government not addressed that problem? The state government keep quiet. They watch local government growing under this burden of pay primary school teachers. They don't know, give them 1% support to pay primary school teachers. But they take all the glory that they are responsible for primary education in the state. No state in Nigeria is paying primary school, including all the 36 states of Nigeria. So when you don't pay these teachers and you know your local government, as a commissioner for local government, as former commissioner professor, and you know aware that there are some local government Kaduna State that do not have ₦1 left after they got in their federation account, how do you not expect such a local government to function? Third, intergovernmental relationship. Intergovernmental relationship. The federal government isolates itself from its local government, the state government isolates itself from the local government, and the local government is struggling at the grassroots level. In our time, in 1999, in this country, it is on record, AGON, which is all local governments in Nigeria, self-34, we paid the cost to the former governor of Kaduna State, Elijah McAfee, and we had discussion with him. We told him about the importance of local governments in Nigeria, that even governors will not be performing if the local governments are not performing. In our time, AGON in Nigeria purchased 1,000 Prado Jeep, brand new Prado Jeep, that was given to the Nigerian police. Yes, police is the responsibility of federal government, but we knew as a responsible system that these activities are in our domain. Criminality, banditry, kidnapping, robbery, they don't happen at the sky. They happen at the grassroots. The common man and the woman at the grassroots, and the people suffering it. We purchase these vehicles and give to the Nigerian police. Now, since that 1999 date, how many state governments have called the local government to say, let us partner together to purchase some communication gadget, some equipment that will assist the Nigerian police. Now, all these crimes that are happening, they are happening in a local government area. There is no crime that is happening in Nigeria that is not in a particular local government area. What is the relationship between the governors of these states and the local government chairman in that particular area? Are they funding them? The governors are clamoring for state police. They have not been able to organize local vigilante that will work with the local government chairman so you can have locality that is managing this territory. There is no forest in Nigeria. There is no...
Dr. Isaiah Sifu, sorry, we've jumped in now. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. I just want to bring in again Dr. Chris Akumas, the former Deputy Governor of Abia State. Part of what has been said in terms of developing the rural communities, because when we talk about local government, of course, we do know that there are urban areas in Nigeria that are full local governments. I mean, you go to a place like Lagos, for instance, there are urban areas that are local governments here in Abuja and indeed elsewhere in the country. I was just wondering, is there something that we have also not been able to do organically? Because sometimes it appears that we are throwing money at problems in a perhaps uncoordinated manner. I want to cite some examples so you can take it from there. Development partners, when they want to deploy their aid, you find that they say, okay, fine, they are going to electrify or provide pipe-borne water, maybe rural electrification or standalone hand pumps for water in rural communities. That's where they normally focus. The federal government also has the Rural Electrification Agency. That's part of its mandate. Then you also have the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. And so you're asking yourself, why is all of this happening? What is the input from the states? And of course, what is the input also from the local governments? You can be sure that all of these agencies or efforts I've mentioned have huge budgetary allocations. But the outcomes such as we are seeing and we are talking about will seem to point to the fact that governance and authority have broken down in rural communities.
Thank you, Councillor. Let me start by saying that we have quite a number of problems. One of our problems has to do with human capital planning. When you don't plan, so you are not focused and you don't know what you want to develop. And so when you don't develop your human capital properly, what Professor Mato and Dr. Zaya said has to do, we have our areas of strength. In the past, I remember that even in my community, when they see a brilliant child and the parents hasn't got money to train that child and they see the potential, they will organize palm harvest. They will harvest palm, fruit, get the money and collectively train that child for obvious reason. They believe that this child will be an asset for the community as time goes on. They see the prospect. And so they did that. Some of our elders that went abroad were actually sponsored by their communities and local government before we come into the state level. What am I trying to say here? We have stopped planning for what and how to capture the strengths that will govern and develop our local communities. The local governments, the rural areas, we had what we called needs, this, that, beautiful documents prepared. But as we went on, you talked about development partners. Where do they get? How did they go about their need assessment? Who recommended that these particular programs or projects are the ones that are very important and germane and that will help those communities? There was a governor in this country that every budget here, he will ask the communities using the development associations or unions to submit what was most important for them for that year. Amongst that, they will sit down and then look at the ones they can implement for the year. So you have the bottom-up approach where people actually are involved in what is needed to govern the place, to improve the place, to increase situations. Today, we talk of agriculture. I don't hear much about extension agents in our rural areas. Here we are, fighting pandemic of all times. We don't see much of our health officials, rural health, which we used to see. As a child, there were days that even when going to school, your mother will say, make sure you have cleaned, you have swept all these places because the inspectors will come. They want to make sure that sanitation at that village level, we are not even doing it in town. All we do is once in a while we say today is environmental sanitation, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. People will come, push some things out of the gutters, and then you see the tippers and contractors running around and still push those things back into the. We must face realities. We talk about social amenities. What you are providing, of what benefit? How well would it help the people? Are they really happy with it? Would they, for that provision, feel the need to sacrifice something? So, Kingsley, there are so many things.
So many, really.
And I think we just have to go back to the basics. And that is the only way. Otherwise, today we are talking of ungoverned spaces. If we don't plug these holes, we'll be talking of ungoverned areas. And that will not be good for us. I'm happy that Dr. Kabir is here talking about security and all that. How many? We have divisional police offices, stations all over the country. How many of them even have functional vehicles? How many of them have functional communication network? You call on a security group officially to come to attend to an issue. Something is happening. 3 hours they are not there. You keep calling and they tell you, we are coming, we are coming. We are coming, and things continues to happen. So there are so many things that we have to do. I am happy that some state governments are taking the bull by the horn, organizing homeland security, neighborhood, and all that. But like I said in one of the programs, it's confusing. You have so many layers. They are not very clear. They are not well cut out. And then security has gone beyond clubs and machetes. Right. If you have to fight to keep the place, proper. So we just have to really get our acts right, go back to the basics, reorganize ourselves, and then, yes, funding is key. What goes to the various tiers of government is key, but I keep emphasizing prioritization is critical for us to move forward.
Okay, many thanks, Dr. Chris. For any short of time, Dr. Kabir, Kabir Adamu, let's hear you talk to us about this issue finally. We've been doing so many things wrongly in this country, and that's admissible by everybody else. And the essence of maybe this kind of discussion and some other things is to get things right. On your final note, what do you think should be done to govern the ungoverned spaces in this country?
Two basic issues that I would like to prioritize. One of them is our policy priorities. I was amazed when interacting with an official of the National Planning Commission to find out that those priorities were actually in sync with our aspirations. Everything we've discussed here, there are priorities designated by the National Planning Commission. And I mean, it's significant. Time will not allow us to go into the details, but you talked about our development partners. Then the ministries, departments, and agencies, all of them key into this national policy priorities, well designated with the intention of taking us to where we want to do. We know where we want to go. Let's not be deceived about that. Everyone, every government official, every Nigerian that is worthy of his standing know where we want to go. And those things have been prioritized. The challenge has always been compliance. How do you ensure, for instance, that we key into those priorities? When you submit a budget, National Planning Commission, as an example, that is have an oversight into that. How does it key into that? Then, more importantly, the oversight function by the legislature to ensure that even where there are deviations by the executive arm of government, how do they come back? And then, lastly, which is for me the most important point, monitoring and evaluation. You can have beautiful policies and plans. Monitoring and evaluation. How do you correct those plans so that you remain focused. I think that's the way to go. If we're able to look at these two key areas, compliance, priority compliance, and then the monitoring and evaluation component, I think we would reduce this significantly.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Adamu. We're talking about the challenge of implementation. We have plans, we have programs, but to faithfully implement those ones always be a challenge. Of course, this is a very significant topic, and it's something that we'll have to return to at some point. There are still a number of issues to deal with. I was just wondering, some bizarre thought occurred to me. Let me just share it. We're talking about ungoverned spaces, and we say they are in the forest. Now, assuming they were not using those ungoverned spaces as a sanctuary for kidnapping, for banditry, for robbery, and so on and so forth, and they decided to start setting fires to those forests, what would be our reaction?
Climate change.
I mean, I'm just wondering, Professor Kabir, they just start setting fires. We're talking about climate change, we're talking about securing our agricultural lands, and these guys, if they become so ruthless and reckless, nihilistic, just say, okay, nothing for us to gain, set fires to this area. So that's the point that we may wish to. Yes,
there's something we may be forgetting.
Very briefly, 5 seconds.
Okay. These ungoverned spaces have been there. These forests, these areas have been there. But activities were on. People engaged in meaningful and profitable activities in those areas. Why can't our people engage now in those areas? That is key. And that is what
Dr. Chris Akobas, former Deputy Governor of Abia State, a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. We appreciate you for being with us this morning. Dr. Kabir Adamu, Security Risk Management Expert, thank you very much. One matter you take home, you see, communal clashes occur in Nigeria over land. Now criminal elements have taken over the land and the communities are helpless. So you go and consider that and then you see how you deal with that. Professor Kabir Mato, of course you had one shot, but a very long shot today. Of course we'll have the light in getting you back on Good Morning Nigeria. Kabir Mato from Kabir Mato, what you have on the screen is still Kabir Adamu, by the way. Professor Kabir Mato, Professor Kabir Mato, thank you very much for being with us from Kaduna Network Center. From Benin, we're joined by Dr. Azaya Osifo, two-term chairman of Umuode local government area in Edo State. We appreciate your insight into this conversation. And for those who sent in their tweets, deep thanks as well. Good Morning Nigeria is back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
I'm Yusuf Ndabu Suman saying thank you for being part of this. Stay safe.
What does it take to get ahead in today's world? To get your dream job, the perfect girl, even a table at your favorite dance club. It takes moving fast. It takes moving at the speed of 4G. With Intel 4G LTE, you've got it all covered. That's because you have access to super fast unlimited data that enables you move as fast as the speed of light. Now, no download is too heavy, no conversation too long. Nothing is impossible. Get Intel 4G LTE Advanced today and do so much more. Intel. Live more.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can watch NTA International live on your TV, computer, iPad, tablet and phone. Log on to visiontv.co.uk and click on Entertainment, then NTAI. You can also download the iOS or Android app on your mobile devices to
to watch NTA International on the go. Anywhere, NTA International.